what is the future of Hollywood and human beings with AI right here, right now?
Today, I'm excited to announce our new state-of-the-art model, VO3. VO3 can generate sound effects, background sounds, and dialogue.
The north exit. Use the service tunnel.
It used to be you compete against, in auditions, those who were your age, your look, and available during the time that the film's going to shoot. But now you're going to compete against every actor that's ever lived.
It's a different ball game, and creators have a whole unique opportunity to pitch their vision like never before. And I don't care what artist or filmmaker tries to tell me otherwise, you're a damn fool if you don't see the opportunity here. Like a damn fool.
Caleb Ward, Curious Refuge.
People have strong opinions. It's almost like politics. Like, people have strong opinions and they tend to be polarized in those opinions. To those that embrace it, and I would say the majority, especially because I tend to run a little bit more in the technical world as it relates to Hollywood, those people tend to be a little more accepting and optimistic about just what this means. Because, obviously, if your background is being on a computer, figuring out technical challenges and how that relates to creativity, AI is at its core very much, a tool that's doing that for you. But it's very funny because there are some, like, for example, VFX artists that are also like very hesitant to use the technology, even though, up to this point in their career, they've based their entire careers on learning the latest technology and workflows and things like that. So it is very interesting to see how different mindsets shift. I would say that folks who are more in the, I would say, conceptual side of Hollywood. So, screenwriters, producers, people that, are really the ones that are crafting the story more in their head as opposed to like boots on the ground, tend to be a little more nervous about what it means, whereas, lighting directors and things like that I've talked to aren't quite as nervous because, it's very hard for an AI to show up on your film set and move a light from, one here to there, right? So I think it's really interesting to see that I would say like 50-50. 50% of people are optimistic, 50% of people are pessimistic. I'd say the majority of people that I've talked to that are pessimistic haven't actually used the tools to realize where the limitations are, because there's some very real limitations at this point. If you've ever tried to write a script in ChatGPT, it's not a quality script. Like, you can't use that script to, tell a super convincing story. So there's just some clear limitations in where I really feel like people, I would really encourage people to start just trying out some of these tools to make an informed opinion for themselves, as opposed to just, reading on the news. I mean, obviously the studios, in light of just everything going on, there's a bit of hesitation to outwardly acknowledging artificial intelligence because, they're trying to keep artists happy, and, there's a certain rhetoric that they're trying to keep as it relates to the tools. But behind closed doors, every single studio I've talked to is embracing AI in the pre-visualization process. And so I would say, if you have a story, like, for example, if you are a writer and you have a vision for a story, absolutely, like, if you can, like, go through training. Doesn't have to be Curious Refuge, but just learn how to use these tools, because you could absolutely create a concept trailer that, it may not be exactly the way that you envision it, but it could be pretty darn close. And so I think it's an amazing superpower that is absolutely helpful for sharing your creative vision. And even if you don't use it to pitch your idea specifically to a studio, I do think studios, if you came to them, I have an AI trailer and a story, and like, here, want to talk, I think, you could probably open a few doors that way, as long as you're connected to the right folks. But even if you just wanted to use your conceptualization for your own personal gratification in seeing kind of how that idea might translate visually, or, if you're collaborating with a cinematographer or a lighting director, hey guys, generally this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And they can use, these AI tools. I've been chatting with a guy who he's directing a fairly big project right now, and he's using AI to help put together the storyboards and the concepts. And like, even in the visual effects side of things, a big part of your VFX budget is spent doing research. A lot of people don't realize that. It's figuring out how, like what exactly it is that you want and then implementing it. And so if you're able to use AI to more or less show like, hey, here's what I want. I just want the really polished version. That's going to save you a heck of a lot of time. And the artists that are, working on that, it's going to give them the art direction to get started and to make headway a lot faster than, if it's just like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like an explosion over here. What do you got? I think you can make a direct comparison. For example, we, up until like 20 years ago, didn't have like a literal like camera phone that we could like go and make, videos out of like any part of day-to-day life. And so really, if you watched anything up to that point, it had to go through a traditional, let's say, Hollywood process or television pipeline for you to consume it. And now, there's more content than a billion lifetimes could possibly consume out there. But, the majority of it is just absolute nonsense, right? Or at least stuff that's not saying something deeply on an artistic level. It's just kind of, content that exists for its own sake. I think that, we probably will see a lot of projects that come out, but generally, the cream rises to the top. And so, yes, we're probably going to see just a lot of like really silly videos that are just like people playing around, and literally no shade to those people. Like if they're having fun and they're creating something that they enjoy, I don't want to judge if that project's bad or good. Like I want to support them as an artist and not be a personal, like a gatekeeper that's saying they can't create art or they're not creating art because it doesn't meet my qualification standards. I feel like that's that would be very hypocritical of me. Right. But what I want to do is find the stories that resonate with me and make sure that I'm supporting the artists that are creating those. And so what I think is going to happen going forward is stories are going to become much more niche. I think that, if you really resonate with a certain type of story, because the barrier to entry to get that type of story out there is going to be so much lower, I think we're going to see a lot more, not only representation in the content and the films that are created, but also just generally you're going to find that like subsection niche community. If you're just really into like mid-century modernism as it relates to like this idea of like a utopian future and how that relates to like this dystopian reality that we have today, and that type of specific story arc resonates with you, like you're going to see a ton of films that like have those narrative themes. And so they may not be at the quality of like Everything Everywhere, but because they thematically really resonate with you, you can forgive, the quality differences. And so I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like that. And we already see that with YouTube. Gen Z spends like the majority of their time on YouTube compared to like watching traditional films. And I think that it's because they find niche communities that really resonate with things that are important to them. And so, I think we're going to start seeing AI films that do the same thing in just more specific niches that resonate with, a smaller audience, but deeper.
Ben Nash, AI filmmaker.
I'm on the opinion of the first one to make the most money wins. I don't really give a crap about copyright stuff too much. I even have 4 patents to my name, and I don't care. It's if somebody wants to copy my style, which my style I think has gotten a little stale. I try to push it constantly. You back to what you started this off with is there's for a while everybody was prompting in the style of Wes Anderson, and beautiful images come out of that. Still, I love the images that come out of that prompt style. Again, some kid in Iowa or Nigeria or somewhere is going to be doing this and putting out videos that make impact, and that's going to be huge. And if that kid can make a name for himself making content, that's bigger than it's even bigger. Your own reputation and what you can create, to me, is so much more valuable than getting credits on a film or getting a few dollars paid here and there. It's I think people fight and waste too much time over this. The whole Hollywood strike, I think, is I'm going to piss some people off here. I think it was a waste of time, and people could just be making content, to be honest. Like, just go for it. Produce. And that's my take on it. I understand all the sides of this very well. And I just think your personal reputation is your style is going to be copied. Everything's going to be copied. In case of Terminator 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to get 90% of the profit probably, or the studio is, but of all the employees working on the film, a lot of people are going to be down towards minimum wage there, and and trying to get that, every time it shows on Netflix, get a penny here and a penny there. Great, fight for that if you want to, but I would advise anybody who's, again, in the scene, they know how to make films. They see how it's done, even if they're only one part of it. So start creating your own IP, your own intellectual property. Come up with your own characters. We don't need to make a Terminator 8. We with AI, come up with a new character, push that character, and all of a sudden, that's what you're known for. This is your character, and make it happen. Similarly, that's how that's why I bought this MIDI keyboard, because this summer I was like, man, musicians who make music really need to partner up with some AI artists to make some videos for their work. And I put out an open call to the internet. I said, hey, musicians, if you're sitting on several gigs and hard drives of music that you have not released, why not? Are you only on SoundCloud, or why not put it on YouTube? Why not promote it on Twitter? And yeah, you're going to need a video. So either, I told them, to all the musicians, I still mean this, if you're a musician and you're not creating AI art videos for your music, you need to learn how, because the people who are making AI videos right now are learning music. And that's what drove me to go back into music, because I, again, wanted to make music videos myself. I want to make, rap videos. I want to so bad. And I've done, several. I did a Tupac video last year and I loved it. And, I want to do more, but I don't necessarily need to do Tupac. I want to come up with my own alter ego dude. I like MF Doom. I want to recreate. I want to do my own version of him. So I'm moving in that direction, where I'm going to start making my own music and try to make that scene work for me too. So again, all these people working in Hollywood that aren't getting paid the big bucks like the stars, create your own star, because you can do it. And so that's my advice there. Well, I've been around this a long time, and this is the most exciting time I've ever had as a creative person. This year alone has been just like the most rewarding. I feel like leading up to this point, I've always dabbled between industrial design and web development and code, and I also do a lot of like woodworking. I have a CNC router in the garage. I do a lot of that type of production. So I'm very artistic, but I feel like all those things are coming together finally, at least for myself, but for everybody, to be able to be a creative person at home, creating, videos, creating music videos. It's finally coming together, and this is truly, we now are entering the creators economy, and it's an amazing time to be alive. So I'm pretty stoked. That's what keeps me going. But yeah, it's hard to keep up.
Dave Clark, director and co-founder of Promise Studios.
Growing up, being introduced to, like I said, international film, right? My father was introducing me to like the Akiras and the Ghost in the Shells when I was very young, because he was an avid VHS collector. So he would travel, obviously be stationed all around the world, and bring back some of the greatest films I can remember ever seeing. And then I think from there, just my love of film just continued to grow as I got into art school, as I got into Pratt. I studied film there along with fine arts. And then, obviously, when you graduate from art school, we all go through the starving artist moment. Like, wait a minute, how am I going to make bread? How am I going to put food on the table if I ever become a father? So you start learning how you can utilize your tools and how you can utilize your skills to like make money. And that's how I got into advertising. It was always an interest of mine. Obviously, I studied graphic design, I studied illustration, typography, things of that nature. And it was always interesting to me of how I could use those kind of skills and bring it into a visual medium, like moving pictures, like advertising, like commercials. So I kind of went into advertising first. And then as I was in advertising, I started getting into commercial direction, because I was still in love with filmmaking. I always wanted to still be a filmmaker, director, writer, whatever. So I'd always, on the side, because you have access to like the ARRI Alexas and the Reds and all these amazing cameras when you rent them to do shoots. So I started shooting my own short films, and I'm a huge sci-fi horror fan. So a lot of my stuff was like horror shorts. You can find a lot of it online. One of them was a short called #YourDead, Dead, which is funny enough about kind of AI and social media taking over your life. And that got on Crypt TV. Crypt TV was owned by Eli Roth, and then I did another film for Crypt TV called Splintered, which internally they said was one of their better narrative driven stories, which was about a black guy who was in the military and he was suffering PTSD, and he had to, basically this PTSD kind of became a monster in his life, and he had to protect his family from it. So again, I think my understanding of story and narrative storytelling kind of helped kind of that in combination, I know we'll get into a combination with the current tool sets of AI, allows me to, I think, create pieces that get recognized and stand out a little bit because it comes from an artist's place first. It comes from a storytelling place first. It's never just, and yeah, I'd go in there and I have fun and I create a bunch of cool, vivid imagery that it's cool to look at. But I always try to say, how can I take that imagery and turn it into a story? So that's where my filmmaking background, I think, has helped. An exciting component of AI tools is you can use it at the pitch process, which I'm doing. And actually, I see more producers, more studios almost expecting an AI generated type sizzle or trailer to sell your idea. You know, the days of a PowerPoint and just ripping someone else's images off of their own like other movies, like those days are going to be over. Like you're going to have to really create your vision, and what other better way to do it than with AI? So all my pitch decks are AI generated. I do sizzles for it, as you can see. Like if I'm pitching like an IP or if it's my own thing, I'll go out and like another short great example is that's a feature film script that I've written that's currently in Hollywood, in the Hollywood system. That, you know, they're looking at that like, okay, cool. So this AI thing could be a hybrid approach with live action. Now we can kind of start to see your vision. So I think, yeah, you can use AI tools for like a pitch deck or a storyboard, but in the same vein, you can use those same tools to create a motion picture, to create a sizzle, a trailer, to sell your idea, to really show the world. Like never before could we ever really do that to this level. Like 5 years ago, we did ripomatics and stuff, and it was like taking like sci-fi, you know, taking the Star Wars shots and, you know, all that kind of stuff and cutting together a trailer to sell an idea. Now you could just generate that stuff. Put your own your own thumbprint on it. You know, someone like myself, someone who or other people who might be talented or have these great ideas that otherwise Hollywood never would have seen. Like, you know, like that Dismal Swamp trailer got featured on Forbes, right? Like I would have never thought in a million years something about a slave horror trailer created with AI would get onto Forbes. Like that, to me, that shows you the power of what we have here in our hands. And people, like, I always think about like the kids I grew up with when I lived in, like, cause I lived in like the hood when I lived in Southern Virginia. I lived there. We call it Bad News VA. You know, it was not good. It was a lot of my friends didn't make it out. But I was like attributed to my international travels that allowed me to always focus on, there's more to this. There's more than just dealing drugs. There's more to this. I can actually, if I'm an artist, I can try to make a way and become an artist, and by any means necessary. And I think AI is going to allow someone from that kind of situation, whether you're a person of color, whether you're a woman, whether you're someone who just no one's taken serious, come up with a great idea and someone's going to see it and be like, damn, there's the next Spike Lee. Like, here's his idea. It's brilliant. We would never know he had a brilliant idea, but here's this thing online, got 1 million views, and it caught an exec's attention. It caught Jordan Peele's attention. You know, I always think about the end horror, like to me, and there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of Black horror filmmakers out there in the overall story of horror storytelling. People think about, oh yeah, like Jordan Peele. That's what somebody will say when you say, well, name one, or like M. Night Shyamalan. It's like, it's very few, you know, whereas you can name a bunch of, 100 other regular film directors. But I think horror is a place to your point that's going to allow someone to use a groundbreaking tool to tell a story, whether that's a hybrid approach like I did, or whether it's a full on AI generated piece. Like I was actually thinking about that movie Skinamarink that came out a year ago. Like I felt like that came out like a year too soon. That movie could have been done completely in AI generation. Like, did you see that movie? Like it was all analog. You know, he did it for no money. Very experimental, very edgy. A lot of people, like, there's very mixed reviews. I appreciate it because I thought it was so different. And it took like the whole analog horror to a different world, but there was not people like speaking on camera. It was like very like, you saw an angle and you heard some sound, very sound design heavy. But like that could have been done with AI generations 100%. Like someone can make that movie right now. So me, like to your point, like, yeah, I think AI and horror or sci-fi, it's going to allow someone to create the first feature length film using these tools. Fran Drescher actually is the one who shared the webinar that I did. I didn't speak directly to her, but I spoke to her board of directors, and a lot of the SAG, thousands of the SAG community have watched it by now. But the main thing I say to help them understand it is to talk about how CGI affected film. When CGI first became a thing, it was a scary moment also for the film community. But when you think about how CGI is currently used today, where you're talking about like a 1,000-person crowd in the stadium, that's CGI, right? When you're talking about, making sure that the actors are safe when they're doing certain stunts, and even the stunt people are put in danger, that's where CGI is used. So I think the initial, this fear of it replacing them, I don't think it's going to replace them. I think it's actually going to make their job easier when it comes to, a lot of these big actors are very busy. I'm sure they wouldn't mind making an extra 1 or 2 films a year. How can you do that? Maybe some of the parts of the role which you're not having to actually act. Maybe you're sitting on a horse in the distance or whatever it is. You can use some form of AI technology and with their approval, your likeness or your voice. I know some actors love the idea of if they need to do an ADR session, they don't want to have to fly back to a studio and do that. They're already on their next film. So there are a lot of actors who, as long as they are the ones who get to choose and agree to it and get paid for their time or their likeness, they're cool with it. And I think, you got to kind of look at it the same way that us as filmmakers have to look at it. Like it's a tool to enhance your life, to help you, right? To help you work on more projects, to help you work on better projects, and to just allow a little bit more freedom. I think don't look at it as something that's going to replace you. Look at something that's going to help you do what you need to do. And that's kind of what I told the community. And never in a million years would, if I try to pitch that to Hollywood, would they ever take that meeting. They'd be like, sounds boring. Been there, done that. What else you got? But now you put it together and now you show them with your actual vision before they can even denounce it. It's a different ball game. And creators have a whole unique opportunity to pitch their vision like never before. And I don't care what artist or filmmaker tries to tell me otherwise. You're a damn fool if you don't see the opportunity here. Like a damn fool. And I tell people this all the time. I didn't make AI, but I'm damn sure going to use it to tell my story by any means necessary. And if you are a person of color, you're a woman, you can't get into Hollywood. If you're someone who lives in Arkansas, you don't have opportunities or connections, make this kind of stuff. Make these type of stories. If you have a great story, people will see it and will get to the right person. Like this is the opportunity for everyone. It's amazing.
Blaine Brown, AI filmmaker.
I think what it does more than anything is it opens the door for kind of the folks that want to create something that might not otherwise have the means. I mean, that's where we're going to see it mostly, I think, initially. I mean, Hollywood's got a pretty big budget and to make movies. Typically, I think the tools are going to have to refine quite a bit before they get used a lot there. But I don't think we're too far off, especially when you start seeing tools that allow for video to video prompted, changes where you have a video, it might be beautiful that you shot with your own drone or something, and then you can prompt it to look like it's snowing, for instance, like that kind of stuff. Maybe that would streamline some of, Hollywood's tools. But where I think it gets really fun is these tools in the hands of like creators, like myself, and maybe that's why I'm biased, being able to create short films or even potentially longer form films that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise without a whole cast, crew, budget. I'm connected with a gentleman who runs the AI R&D lab at University of Southern California, I believe, who's that whole group or department or initiative is actually funded by the Hollywood studios, and he interfaces with them and executives wanting to know, okay, because he was reaching out to me wanting to know like what sort of tools I'm using there. There's certain folks within that industry that are wanting to learn more, but it's also, I think, like anything, it can be scary. There's and the rapid progression, I think, is what's probably the scariest for folks, because I mean, people were not expecting Sora level quality like this quickly, and so what does that mean for the next iteration? I've seen some of these graphs that show like the progression of this technology, and it's like hockey sticking, right? It's like what was, things that took 100 years to invent now take, a day or whatever in a minute. So it's just incredible. We might see a model that blows Sora out of the water in a week or two or something, who knows. What I've particularly found, just because of the work I've done internally for our company, is I'm now able to create, marketing video within a couple days that normally I would have had to outsource to an agency, paid them 30 grand, and then taken a month, right? And I did it in like 2 or 3 days because I've got all these tools, I can animate stuff. Like, so I think there's a risk there. They're going to have to kind of adapt and adopt, I think, some of these tools in their own workflows to remain competitive. But it's interesting, right? I mean, I think they're going to be affected pretty heavily one way or the other.
Andrew Gibbs, director.
He said one time early on, and this was kind of when we were starting to get into it. Like I said, we've done the tutorial stuff for years, on other like basic stuff. And he has a filmmaking channel too, where he teaches like how to run a film business. And he has a story about when he was younger and he was working in the photography world. And it was right before like the 5D Mark II came out, that the whole Canon DSLR movement. And the traditional film photographers were like, this is never going to go anywhere. This is done. Digital stuff is like, you need to stay away from digital. It's not going to get, and it's literally mirroring exactly almost what we're hearing today about AI. No one shoots film anymore. I mean, we do, but we do it because it's cool and it's fun, right? But like the guys that were afraid of the digital cameras, they're not doing it anymore. And so it's the whole idea that you have to embrace this stuff. If it's going to make our jobs easier, why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we learn it and try and figure out not how to replace what we're doing, but make it easier and better? I mean, the whole idea of like film and digital cameras or red versus film, they were still the same, I guess, right? In the end, they were still the same. This is going to be completely different. It's not the end product looks different. And with red and film difference, you couldn't tell. And especially now, I mean, you can't really tell if it was shot on Arri or film anymore. It's so damn close. Yeah, we've had some reach out from different people in the industry, and we've been able to help them. It's not so much about teaching them how to do it. It's more about us helping them do it now. I still think it's really far out to replace movies. It might be cool on these concept things that we're doing and showing and helping pitch decks, and kind of getting a point across in short films. But I don't know if it's, even if Sora can do it, where we're going to sit in a movie theater for an hour and a half and watch an AI movie. It's still got a long ways out. And I'll always still want to watch an actual movie shot on a camera in front of real people. That'll never go away.
Michael Mitchell, director.
I think that there's three categories of it. There's the people like myself that are openly, publicly embracing it, and I think that percentage is still rather small, to be completely honest. I think that's, if I'm putting arbitrary numbers, like that's 10% of the filmmakers that I know that are just openly saying, I'm using these things. I think there's potential. I see those possibilities. There's a second category that is people that are dabbling in this space or starting the exploration, but there's so much negative energy around or so much fear. And I mean, and I understand where it's coming from. It's like we're looking at colossal change in this industry, and there's going to be a shift. And we can obviously talk about that specifically in a lot of like where this is going, but that's that second bucket where they see that things are changing, they're starting to dabble, but they're not willing to publicly say that they're using it. And that's a much larger percentage. I would say that's probably closer to 50% of the filmmakers that I know are at a minimum using it to help do their storyboards, or we're doing treatments for any project that we go into. We're doing a creative treatment for how we would do that job. And whether that's generating images or I'm going to expose myself as like, I've trained Claude with every treatment that I've ever written. And then I kind of just word vomit into Claude like, hey, this is the new script. These are my ideas. Let's do the general structure of a treatment, which used to take me days. And now I can spit out a first draft in 5 minutes after Claude asks a couple additional questions about the creative. It's like, and I'll still go through and finesse and touch those things, but it's like these are tools that are going to exponentially increase our productivity and fuel our creativity along the way. So it's like, I'm fully in on all of this. And then I guess the remaining, at least 40% are people that have their pitchforks ready and they're storming the castle for AI and change. And I think that a lot of it is misunderstood. And I think that's where a lot of this fear, that anger comes from, is that it's going to change. Things are going to be altered and already are being changed with these tools that exist that are only going to get better on an exponential curve. I am in no way saying that there's not going to be a place for us to go somewhere with a camera to shoot two actors talking in a room, telling a joke, who's like, I've made a living off of doing that. And I think that a space for that is absolutely going to exist. The amount of productions that happen in that construction are absolutely going to change. But I'm of the idea that if the ability to make a film with more production efficiencies or more budget friendly, it democratizes the creative process for more people. So I think that there will be more opportunities if you're willing to embrace this, but there are some people that are going to get left behind it reminds me of when I was moving out to Los Angeles, where it was like I was still working with a lot of directors even in the commercial space that were adamant we needed to shoot on film and that digital was never going to catch up to that place. And we had all of these notes about, well, the greens look really off with what red is doing right now. And so then that causes this extra thing that we have to do. And like the dynamic range isn't there with the Alexa camera. And I'm just hearing like it puts 6 fingers on it, or it can't do words, or that sort of thing. It's like, guys, the technology doesn't stop. We're not at the first. We're at the first step right now. We're not at the finish line. And so, just to continue that analogy, is like I've shot film once in the last 5 years for comparison, and it used to be everything that we were doing prior to that. With the most recent Roadhouse film, is like some of the ADR was done using AI as well. So it's like the people that are so against this or so combative with this conversation or these tools is like the opening statement usually from me is that it's already here. It is already happening. Like and it's not going to go back into the box. Like there absolutely be legal questions that are raised throughout, or copyright and all these sort of things that are going to get passed up through the litigation of the United States or in any of these other countries. Like the UK recently passed that anything that's used with AI will have to be watermarked. But even that is like, is that a digital watermark? Is that a made with AI in the bottom right corner? Is like that stuff isn't defined yet. But even that litigation means that that's not going anywhere. I mean, 100% it's the Trojan horse. I mean, if there's the two camps, the AI and the others, like the AI camp is elated by this. It's like a lot of us use Premiere. Everyone uses Adobe in this space as well, but it brings a lens of legitimacy to this space where it's like Adobe is co-signing that these tools are useful, that these tools are going to be a part of filmmaking going forward. And I mean, I'll be honest, I've had an assembly that's coming together and I've been like, man, I wish that this shot was 12 frames longer. Or man, I wish that we had just retouched this up instead of sending an assembly that I'm not 100% happy with, or having something that I have to talk to the VFX company about, like, hey, let's clean up how these glasses look, or anything like that. It's like, it's enabling those abilities to happen quickly in a fully legitimized, like industry-wide used application. And for the camp that isn't AI, I think you're going to be sitting alone in a dark room, putting an assembly together one night, and you're going to be tired, and you're going to see that little symbol up in the right where it's like, well, hold on. And it is that gateway. It's like you said, that Trojan horse to these tools are immensely beneficial and they can absolutely help. And I think that the Adobe integration is going to take another step in that direction with the filmmaking community at large. I think that jobs are going to be changed, and I do think that there will be some jobs will be lost. That's the absolute truth. But the other side of that truth is, just because I have AI, even as a director or producer, I don't have the time to prompt out all of my storyboards. I'm still going to be reaching out to someone to do that. And so there are absolutely tools that exist that could make someone that has the skill of a storyboard artist immensely powerful with these tools. But it's learning and adapting. It's like, I've every agency brief that I receive now has some sort of AI imagery that's plugged in to help show the client what the script is going to end up doing. But by the time we get to production and I know that this specific room needs to be drawn up in this frame, or these two people are going to be standing here, it's like, I don't suddenly have all the time in the world to do these boards myself. It's like, I can send guidelines to these people, but the time that it takes for a storyboard artist to sketch is those timelines. Once clients catch wave how this grows, that's going to be compressed. So adapting is going to still allow people to do that. And I think that even with as closely involved as I am with the VFX tools, and we can talk about this even with the Gundam work or the like history of trunks, is those are gigantic set pieces that were millions of dollars of VFX to happen. And I'm doing those in my garage with my best friend at this point. So the VFX world is changing. And even with the VFX partners that I've worked with or that I know in this industry, a lot of them are in that adaptation phase because these jobs are still going to exist. Their shape is just going to change. And the amount of people or the amount of time that it takes to execute these things is going to be drastically reduced. But that is the efficiency metric that I was kind of talking about, even with my treatment writing, where it's like, that used to take me 2 days to just get the words down, and I can get a shell of that together in 15 minutes. And it's, and even in this commercial world, and then, like, even on a broader thing of beyond storyboards and VFX, is like, there's a lot of fear in the commercial production world right now that we're going to shoot less because they can do more with AI, and or clients are going to be taking this stuff directly and doing it themselves. And as someone that is piloting these tools right now, is like, I can tell you right now, there's not a client on earth that's patient enough to get the right image on Midjourney or to do these things. And like, as the exponential curve continues to change and all these technologies get better or faster, or even like Sora is doing, where it has edit points built into it. If you do a minute-long clip, it's continued adapting even from my position as well. There's like, if I stay on top of these tools and I'm able to learn what is changing the space or what is the best and most efficient way that we can be doing this stuff, but it's also enabling you to supercharge everything that you're doing.
Nem Perez, director and founder of Storyblocker.
I actually started doing music videos. So, I grew up in like this really amazing community of musicians and artists that were doing some pretty incredible things during the like blog era of hip hop. So I started doing a lot of hip hop videos in my early days. So I did a lot of videos for Chicago artists such as like Chance the Rapper and like Vic Mensa and Rocky Fresh. And so that's how I got my start in filmmaking. And then Hit Boy, who, if you're familiar, he's like Grammy Award winning producer of Nem Perez and like a bunch of Drake and Beyonce tracks. He called me after watching one of my videos, said, come out to LA. That's how I got my start in LA. Started doing a bunch of commercials. I also have a background in advertising. So I've been in advertising for over 2 decades doing creative technology work involving art and technology to create experiences for brands. Started doing a lot of commercial work after my music videos. And then I was really fortunate enough that through my connections in advertising, Disney got in touch with me because they were looking for a director who can pretty much do it all. So I acquired Disney as my first client for my production company. And since then, I've directed over 12 commercials for Disney. Now, fast forward about 1.5 years ago, I got really heavily involved with AI. And 2 things happened. I started actually my own AI company called Storyblocker. And Storyblocker is a film tool. It's an iOS app that helps filmmakers visualize their movies. And it's also a production company. So we produced the T2 remake. Yeah, I remember pretty vividly, actually. I was at a party and my friend showed me something that he made on Midjourney. At that point, I kind of heard about Midjourney, but I thought it was like under lock and key and like only a few people had access to it. But he was showing me how actually he was making assets for his Dungeons and Dragons events. He was making like characters for Dungeons and Dragons. And so immediately I got access to Midjourney and I started just creating just everything and anything, right? And then the real light bulb moment for me was like, wow, like I think I could actually create like concept art for films and movies that I have in my head. So I started doing that really, really heavily. I created basically a beat per beat shot list of a movie that I had called The Time Traveler's Dilemma, and then I put that out there, and that kind of got the ball rolling. There's a lot of fear, valid fear. There's a lot of concerns, and I think that it's our job as the people that are creating these pieces of work and influencing, that we move about in a way that is fair and ethical, and in a way that, again, like if we have concerns, we speak up about it, right? So personally, I'm pretty optimistic about AI and how it could be used in filmmaking. I actually think that it's a tool that can empower filmmakers. I mean, personally, I've been extremely empowered by the work that I've been doing in AI, and especially with the T2 project. And a lot of my peers that are working in AI right now are now getting opportunities that they could only have dreamed about, before. So I think that if you embrace it, it could be an extremely powerful tool. Um, right now, I think that the best use case for AI is actually in pre-visualization, essentially being able to dream up your movie before you go out and shoot it. So if you're a filmmaker that does traditional filmmaking, you know, sometimes, you'll step foot on set and you get asked a million questions, right? What is the color of this? What is this person wearing? How does this look like? What does the world that we're building feel like? And I think that artificial intelligence allows you to create that world and all of your shots and the look of all your characters and your environment and the look and feel, so that you can look at it and decide, is this working sooner rather than later? Because you don't want to find out it's not working once you're on set, right? So I think that AI is extremely powerful for concepting and pre-visualizing and storyboarding. And actually, I think that's a godsend because, a lot of these films are going to be better for that, like they're just going to be better because you've already figured everything out before you step foot on set. I do think that the way that we went about it was a way that I think that others can maybe pursue it in the future, where it's this big Hollywood premiere. We had this great trailer. We had posters. We had a red carpet event. We did a bunch of press and PR. We even had T-shirts at the event that, like, we weren't selling them, but like we were wearing ourselves. A lot of like memorabilia. So I think that, the biggest question is like, can I make money with my films, right? And I think that once the copyright stuff gets resolved, I think that people can look at this as a really good way to go about it, right? Again, our film was non-commercial. I just want to be clear. We didn't make any money. We didn't profit off of that. But we did these things to showcase, how it could be done. Look, I can tell you that there's so many people in Hollywood right now figuring this out, right? I think like the whole Hollywood community is just buzzing about how they can use these tools. So I think eventually, that will happen. I think that what's stopping everyone right now is the legal issues, right? I think that the number one thing that's preventing everyone from actually doing this right now is the legal issues. And that's why I think that it would actually come from the indie community first, right? So I think that like it'll be like a T2 type project, right? Where like it's just a bunch of artists that made a film and then they just put it out there and that film's going to be absolutely incredible, So I think that that will happen first. And then after that happens, maybe there's like a big insurance policy behind that movie or something, or I don't know how that works, but maybe like a studio will pick that up and then put that out there just as a test, like I think like studios, I think they won't take that risk, but like if they see someone else taking that risk, they might like, pick that up and put that out there. But I think that what needs to happen in order for that to happen first is that these models need to be more ethical. So I really like the work that Tool is doing, using like Getty Images, model. And I really like the work that Adobe is doing with the Firefly model. And I hope that more people start to pick up on that.